Hey everyone! Today we're making something sleek and useful, a custom fit leather watch strap using the acrylic template from Tandy. It's simple, stylish, and gives your timepiece a personal touch. Grab your tools and let's get started. When you're looking at your acrylic templates, you'll find 3 different shapes and each one stamped with 2 numbers. The first number indicates the width of the watch face hardware, while the second number indicates the size of the closure hardware. Use these measurements to decide which template piece works for the hardware you've got. We've also included 2 different options for closures, watch buckles or button studs, depending on the build and aesthetic you're going for. So let's talk about hardware. Depending on what watch face you'll be using, you'll use different hardware. In this case, I'm using an Apple Watch face. So I have Apple Watch hardware. So these slide into the face on the Apple Watch. And then I also have a watch buckle. Now, watch buckles are different than other buckles because the pin here can be removed and snapped back into place. So depending on what your build looks like, you may need to be able to pull that pin out and slide it into your finished piece. Or if you're switching out buckles, you can also slide that pin out and slide your other buckles in. Most buckles won't have this, so this is definitely a different type of buckle, and you want to make sure when you're building a watch strap, you're using the correct buckle type. To make this pattern, you're going to start out with the 2 pieces of the acrylic template. And then you're going to cut those from a piece of 4 to 6 ounce leather. Here I'm using veg tan. I've gone ahead and cut these pieces out according to the pattern pieces, and then I've also made a small keeper, and we'll go over that here in just a little bit. Once you have your pieces cut out, you want to make sure to do all of your edge finishing. Here I've burnished and edge beveled all of those so they are ready to go. I've also conditioned and sealed this leather as well. So once you have them cut out and ready to go, we'll go ahead and set these pieces aside. Your next step is going to be to skive where the pattern instructions indicate, and that's going to be in a couple different spots at the end of each piece, as well as this end where the buckle is going to go. Pretty much everywhere we're going to roll our pieces, we're going to skive. So 1, 2, and 3. Now to skive these pieces, you can use a couple different tools. I used a French skiver. You could also use something like the Japanese style skiving knife. A head knife or a round knife is also an acceptable one to use here. It really just depends on which tool you are most comfortable with, but use that tool to do your skiving for all 3 of those pieces. Now, once you've got everything skived, come back and we'll start the next step. Next, we're going to use a contact cement to install our hardware. So start with a contact cement of your choice. I'm using a water-based contact cement and a silicone applicator. To do this, we're going to get our adhesive ready and put it just on the edge right here at the tip, and then just where we finish skiving at the other side, and leave the middle bit empty because that's where our hardware is going to go. So go ahead and put a little bit of adhesive on both sides, leaving a gap where your hardware is going to install. And you're going to do this on both straps. So again, just there at the tip, and then just where we finished skiving, leaving a gap between the 2. And then you're going to give this a couple of minutes to get tacky before we move to the next step. So go ahead and leave those there. Make sure you've got enough without overdoing it. You don't want a thick coat. You just want enough on there. Scrape off any excess with whatever applicator you're using. Another great applicator for stuff like this would be the reusable glue spreaders. These ones here, they come in a 6-pack, which are also super nice. So give those a couple of minutes to get tacky, and then we'll move to the next step. While those are getting tacky, we're going to talk about this guy here. So this is going to be our keeper. And what you want to do is wrap it around both pieces here to make sure it's going to be long enough. So when you go to make yours, you're going to adjust it to the thickness of your leather specifically. Once you've got that, you're going to skive on the grain side at one end and the flesh side on the other end, so that when you wrap it around, They'll create a perfect loop that's not bunched or bulky at the end. And for this one, we're going to go ahead and all the areas on this one that we skived, the grain side at one end and the flesh side at the other end, apply that adhesive, and then this is also going to sit for a couple of minutes while it gets tacky. So because we're not lining this strap, we're going to go ahead and slide our hardware into that area that isn't glued, and then roll that lip over so that the adhesive on both sides can catch. And then you want to take a clamp of some sort and clamp that on there to make sure you get a really nice tight fit while it dries. I've lined this with leather to make sure I don't get weird impressions from the clip markings, just to protect my leather a little bit more. So we'll leave that there, and we're going to do the same thing on this side. Grab your hardware, slide it on. It can be a little bit sticky, so be careful and take your time. And then roll and clamp. Then give these enough time for your adhesive to set. Then we're going to take our keeper and we're going to roll that, and just like with the others, with the adhered spots, making sure you get the entire space that's been skived, slip that right on there. You want to make sure you don't get any adhesive on your fingers so it doesn't get onto the front part or the grain side of your leather, so it's not going to be visible. You can also and should also clamp this one and let all of your adhesive cure until it is totally dried. So we're going to go ahead and add a stitch to this one here. What you want to do is put the keeper with something to protect it behind so that you don't punch all the way through both layers. And you want one prong on one side of where you adhered these together and one on the other side. And if you see here, it goes straight through but doesn't hit the other side of the leather, and it splits where we put our adhesive on, so it's going to reinforce that line. While we're here, we can also get our stitch lines ready for all of our other pieces. Grab your wing divider and mark where your stitch line is going to be. And we're actually going to do 2 stitch lines on here, so we'll come back to this in just a moment. For this one, you can use a 4-prong instead of the 2-prong, and we're just going to follow that line. Set that to the side for the moment. We can sew this guy right here, right now. Unlike a lot of other stitches, this one doesn't require a lot. We're just going to kind of round stitch it back and forth. And here I'm using the Ritza Tiger thread. We will insert into the first hole, leaving a tail, and then just go around and around a couple of times. We just want to reinforce this. There shouldn't be a lot of pressure and there shouldn't be a lot of tugging on this, so you don't need it super duper well done. You could also use a leather staple here. That would also work super well. So once we've got this wrapped around a couple of times, we'll tighten both, snip, and use a lighter to lock those in. And our keeper is ready. We're going to slide our keeper back to where it belongs with the stitch inside. Make sure it's oriented correctly. Put the pin through and feed your leather through the bar. There we go. We're then going to hide, so we're going to hide the keeper behind where we're installing the buckle. So you want to make sure that you have enough give in this piece to wrap all the way around, keep your buckle where it belongs, and to hold your keeper in place. And then we're going to stitch around to hold it right there. Now you can push this back a little bit farther if you need. Give it a little bit more room. So adjust that to where you like it, and then we'll adhere all of this down. Now I've already put adhesive on both of these sides, so I'm going to roll that into place and then clamp these where I want them. 1, 2, we're going to clip 1 on each side and leave that in place for everything to lock in. While this is setting, we'll go ahead and take our other strap where we put our stitch holes and go ahead and sew this right across. You want to saddle stitch this because you really want it locked in place. So grab 2 needles, thread each end. If you've got questions about saddle stitching, we've got a number of videos on those. We can link those right in the bottom. Feed your needle through both and then lock this end. You want to get it to about halfway and feed it back through so you close that end and lock it into place. Then continue with your saddle stitch as normal. And once you get to the other end, in the same way, you want to wrap that needle around to lock that end in place. Feed your second needle around, locking it in, feed it to the back stitch, and then finish these 2 ends off. That will complete this side of the watch band before we go back to the other side. Now this is going to keep finishing up. We're also going to sew across this side, and then we'll sew 2 stitch lines. So you're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4 total stitch lines to hold everything in place. If we look at how this is going, we can see how these are going to line up once we're done. We're going to lock the keeper in place by stitching on either side of where it is, and then stitch this hardware piece in right at the end, and we'll be all done. You want to mark these out as straight as you can. Straighten off that buckle so you know exactly where everything is lining up. Make your mark on the one side, your mark on the other side, and your third mark up here. There we go. And all of these stitch lines are shown on the template as well in your instruction set. And with that, both of your straps are done. Now we just need to install the watch face. Simply slide the straps on, and you're all done. Whether it's for everyday wear or a one-of-a-kind gift, this project proves leather straps aren't just for pros. Show us yours with #LeatherTogether, and as always, happy crafting.